Hey, folks, I'm sitting here with Darlene Greene. She has over 26 years of experience in executive leadership and senior management positions across diverse industries, including positions such as Vice President of Strategic Technology Partner at CAFE, Dean of Culver Girls Academy, Director of Client Services for High Tech Networks and Security, and Senior Director for a foundational cell activation technology company. During Darlene's 20 years of military experience, she earned her MBA and held 3 commanding officer positions. Congratulations, ma'am, including serving as base commander overseeing 1,200 personnel. Darlene also created the Returning Warrior Weekend Workshop in 2006. That sounds really cool. We'll have to discuss that too. To help military and their spouses reintegrate successfully and improve their health, a program still in existence across the country today. Her passion today, though, is helping people elevate their GHK-CU peptide to activate their master foundational cells, repair their DNA, reverse age, and get out of pain through the latest photobiomodulation tech. Wow. That was what got me. So thanks to Podmatch, which is a awesome service that's out there that we're both a part of. When you reached out, I read your bio. I said, oh, that's going to be cool. Because I, as most people know that listen to the podcast, my background's in biochem. So whenever I get to nerd out a little bit and kind of recall a little bit of what I learned during my university days, it's really cool. Plus, you're going to stretch the limits of my my understanding as well, I'm sure. So Darlene, welcome to the podcast. And what brings you here today? What do you want to talk about?
David, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, but thank you for the podcast that you do. It's phenomenal. I love that it serves so many our service members, and I love your topics. I've told you before we started that I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I just love them. And I'm like, yes! So I'm cheering behind the scenes as I'm listening. I'm really enjoying it. So
cool.
It's great to be with you today. Yeah, so we can begin wherever you'd like. I mean, the neatest thing, when I was able to be in the Navy and help those folks transition in the Returning Warrior Weekend program, that was perhaps to date, prior to doing what I'm doing right now, the most intrinsically rewarding thing I'd ever done. Because I had sailors and chiefs and officers and Marines and Navy people who were coming back from Afghanistan and not doing and we really did not have anything doing a better job of taking care of them or even thanking them than we had in Vietnam, like really nothing.
Right.
And so they were struggling in isolation. And what was happening for us, and I don't know if Canada did this, but we singled out individuals and we plucked them out of their units and we popped them over there in the middle of a foreign unit. And we did that a lot. We did that with a third of my team. And so what would happen then is they would come back alone, and they were experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, all of the things. And they had nobody to compare it with or talk to about it. And so they felt very alone, and they thought that their circumstances were very unique. Additionally, the spouses and partners of these folks had no group to be talking about what they were experiencing as their spouse was gone and or when they came back. And so it was probably only as a result of my own experiences with PTSD and trauma and depression and things that I was able to see it in my team and think, you know what, they're not okay. They're not telling me they're not okay, but they're not okay. Mm-hmm. And so I stood in front of, I don't know, about 400 one weekend, and I said, look, I want to build a program that does a better job of taking care of you. I don't really even know where to begin with that. I don't know what you need, but I bet you know what you need. And let's work together and let's build it. And so we spent a year creating a curriculum. First, we went looking for something that we could lift off the shelf and begin, but there was really nothing out there. Everything was company oriented or unit oriented. And part of our challenges were this was individual, it needed to be very individual and needed to pull them together into a team. And so we built a curriculum, we trained facilitators, we got keynote speakers, and we had conversations around really tricky topics like why I want to go back. Spouses were being absolutely devastated when the military member would get home and they'd been gone a year and they come in the door and one of the first things they're talking about is how and when they can get back. And that, there's no spouse that can't take that personally until you're in a room with, 20 other people and they say, how many of you want to go back? And every single one of them raises their hands. And then the spouses look at each other and they look around and they go, okay, maybe this isn't about me. Maybe this isn't about my marriage. Right. And so we had keynote speakers that talked about all of the code of the warrior, the difference between killing and murder, the transformational growth, and how you can go past what you're experiencing right now. So lots of things with lots of resources, support. We did EMDR. We had chaplains and therapists and nurses and doctors. Quite honestly, I was a little nervous. I figured I had a pretty big audience that had an opportunity for meltdown at any moment. So we did track data before, during, and after, though, and 100% of people recommended it and said that it had been very beneficial. We got letters that said, this saved my life. We got letters that said, this saved my marriage. And so it ended up being, something that continued on. But it was incredibly intrinsically rewarding. And that was how I left my Navy career after 20 years. And so it was hard to leave that and then go into corporate, right? Nothing I did touched, even to this day, overseeing a team of program managers and doing networking technology, all of that it's good, but it doesn't hit the heartstrings the way that job did, until I began this deep dive into health, really as a result of my husband getting early Alzheimer's. And that was devastating. He was 63, 64 when we got the diagnosis. And you're initially like, there's no way, this can't be it. It's mold, it's something else. It's not, it can't be, but it turned out it was. And we truly tried everything. You have had Dr. Rothschild talking about infrared light therapy, red light therapy. We did gene mapping, microbiome testing. We did hyperbaric chamber, ozone therapy, hydrogen water, daily strength training, high intensity training, sleep protocols, kind of you name it, we tried it. And we even went out of country 4 times to get IV stem cells and injections. And not only did he do that, but I did that too, because I have been diagnosed with 4 different autoimmune disorders, the most significant being POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia. Was diagnosed with that when I was in the Navy. I was actually grounded and couldn't drive for 2 weeks in 2005 because I kept passing out, and I would bonk my head on the side of the bathtub or the corner of a door jamb. And it was pretty serious. So they actually prescribed a medicine for me, David, that increased my blood pressure. I mean, does that sound like a bad idea? It does. It sounds
I'm no medical doctor, but that doesn't sound right.
Sound good. And when I asked, surely there's an alternative. They said, well, not really. You could do compression socks and eat more salt and, other things, but it was really not good. So I was hoping to get some type of relief from the stem cells for that particularly. And obviously was hoping for some improvement for my husband, who at the time had declined so dramatically. Imagine what normally would take 14 years. He had declined in 2. Early Alzheimer's is more aggressive. He had the gene type from both parents. He had the APOE44 gene type. So this was a significant issue for him. And this was a Navy captain, right? Retired 06, a fighter guy who had done 1,200 landings on aircraft carriers. Wow. Very successful carrier airwing commander. Nicest guy on the planet. Just a amazing human being. And so watching this decline to now he's essentially cognitively age 4. No longer engaged in conversation, a zombie shell of his former self, and not even trying to communicate, sleeping the day away, 3.5 hours a day, falling asleep at 7 at night, and really just gone. He would ask me the same questions over and over again. And I just thought, wow, this is where we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was depressed. I was really sad. I had lost my best friend, my partner, my life mate, right? And I found myself, also I had fallen down the last 3 steps of my staircase, and I had broken my foot and sprained my ankle and actually ripped the ligament, 100% ripped one of them and 99% ripped the other. And so they had to do surgery. So I was waiting for surgery, and we're 5 months into this pain when I have a friend say to me, Darlene, I know that you have done stem cells, and I know you understand the power of stem cells. I have something that activates your own. And I can say that for those of you in Canada. In Canada, I can tell you that the product that the technology I'm going to be talking about activates your stem cells. In the United States, I'm going to call them master foundational cells, because the FDA and FTC have decided that your stem cells are a drug. So I'm just going to dance around
It's a
that.
whole other podcast right there,
That's a whole
Darlene.
other
Whole other
podcast.
podcast.
So disappointing. But that's where we are. So suffice it to say, at that point in time, David, I was incredibly skeptical. You're talking about a little patch that looks like this for your audience. It's a tiny little circle, size of a quarter.
Cool.
And it's light therapy. And I said, I don't know anything about light therapy other than I know we tried the infrared stuff and the red light. I have a red light. I have certainly know that light can make amazing things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Your Dr. Rothschild, who talked about all of the different things red light can do for people. It was like listening to all the different things that this can do. And I think that's because your stem cells can do anything, really. They made you. If you actually know about stem cells, you know the first two cells that came together are your stem cells, and they built every part of you. They can become any tissue in your body, any kind of organ in your body. And really, what can't they fix if they made you to begin with? So with a lot of skepticism, I began to apply these patches. No, the neat thing is they come to your door. There's, no contraindications with any kind of medicine. There is no prescription required because there's no medicine in this. Is a non-transdermal patch. So there's nothing in here going into your skin. This is why over 300 Olympic athletes could wear them in the 2008 Olympics, and even Tom Brady and Kansas City Chiefs and a lot of our big stars are wearing them. They don't talk about it because it's a competitive edge that they have, and they don't want everybody to know about it.
Oh.
But we began to patch, and it's hard for me to even describe what a difference. And first of all, again, I'm not going to, there's not enough words to tell you how skeptical I was. Just had zero belief system for this.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to believe in a placebo effect, it was going to be the $10,000-$15,000 IV that I got in Mexico, because I did that 4 times for both of us. Spent, literally thought, am I going to have to mortgage the house? And these are, $150 for a 1 month supply retail or $99 wholesale. So, am I really going to believe that's going to do the trick? No, but in the very first week, the very first day of patching, my husband did not fall asleep. He didn't take that 3.5-hour nap that he'd taken for a year. He didn't even fall asleep at 7:00 at night. He began to chat with me. He began to be much more engaged in conversation. He was so much more with it. It was hard to describe. Replying appropriately to questions and not asking me the same thing over and over again. And perhaps the best thing is that he was back to his original funny and flirty personality. And those things have stayed. In the second week, he got the best deep sleep he'd ever gotten. We'd been working on deep sleep, and I'm that person you kind of talked about. We did the red lights in the bathroom. We did no eating 3 hours before bed. We were making sure we put our eyes on the morning sun. We were grounding. We were doing all the things to get
doing the things. The
because,
checklist was being checked off. Yeah.
That deep sleep was when the brain cleanses itself of all the toxins. And I understood that deep sleep was very highly correlated to Alzheimer's. So I really needed to get him into deep sleep. And all of my efforts were failing. I was getting 15 minutes of deep sleep from him. So imagine my joy when the second week I had 1 hour and 25 minutes of deep sleep for him. And then at the 10th week or so, he regained the ability to whistle, and he regained the ability to drum, and his blood pressure dropped 37 points. And then this nodule that he had on his skin disappeared at 4 months. Like, it was the size of a ping pong ball under his skin. He'd had it as long as I'd known him. It just disappeared. 5 months, he regained his sense of smell. And, it just was phenomenal. His hair grew back, like, darker, and his bald spot closed in. And I was just like, this is amazing. And then I had my own story. Like, I got out of pain in the first day, which was phenomenal, and so phenomenal that I didn't believe it. I literally thought, this must be the day, 5 months in, that I'm out of pain. I can't believe that these patches actually took me out of pain, because it happened so instantly. And but you wear the patches 12 hours on, and then you take them off and let your body rest. And you don't want your body to get used to the signal. Otherwise, it stops responding. Okay. It's called attenuation.
Yeah.
So we just basically wear 12 hours. When I took the patches off, it wasn't 5 minutes and my ankle was just throbbing again. So that was astonishing. And then on top of that, I found that I was I had so much more energy. I had better sleep. I didn't have regular headaches. I didn't have an episode of fainting, and I haven't had an episode of fainting since I patched over a year and a half ago. Like, not one. I have not had to take that medicine to increase my blood pressure once. I lost weight effortlessly. My hormones balanced, and I'm postmenopausal. I'm 59, so I was going through all the stuff, and my body. I know I had no longer have any symptoms of the 4 autoimmune disorders that I had, which were chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, POTS, rosacea. I had thyroid issues. So it really was life changing. And so very quickly, I turned, it was probably week 1 that I turned to my family and said, Mom, Dad, sis, you need to try this. This is,
Hmm.
I can't explain this. I don't really, I can't even tell you how this is working, but this is amazing. And then they had their own, my sister's microscopic colitis, she had been suffering with that for 6 years. She had done stem cells as well. She had done antibiotics. She had done even steroids, and nothing was resolving it. And within 3 weeks, it resolved. So did her plantar fasciitis. Like, so miracle after miracle. And I began sharing this, and I'm digging in now, right? I'm like, what is this? What
Hmm.
is the science behind this? How is this working? And that's where I learned about, peptides are all the rage. Everybody's talking
Yes.
about peptides, right? And
Yes.
what this patch does, and we'll talk about how in a moment, but it elevates copper peptide, GHK-CU. Now, I had never heard of GHK-CU. I had heard of peptides and how powerful they were, but I hadn't heard of GHK-CU. But when you actually look up GHK-CU in PubMed, you will find 50 years of double-blind placebo-controlled studies.
Hmm.
It's been very well studied. It's actually in a lot of cancer clinics. There are wellness clinics that give injections. You can get it in creams, and you can get it in our patch. But what GHK-CU does, and thereby what our patch does, because it elevates GHK-CU, is phenomenal. First, it increases your stem cells and it activates your dormant stem cells. So, if you think about it, when you're 30, half of your stem cells are dormant. I don't know if you knew that, but half of them are dormant when you're 30. And when you're 60, they're almost all dormant. And so they're in there, they're just not doing anything for you. They're not repairing. That's why we're aging and we're not repairing as quickly. But when you activate and elevate those in the US master foundational cells and in Canada stem cells, that they get to go to work for you and do amazing things. And we'll talk about that some more. But the other thing that GHK-CU does is it increases growth factors, which I know you know about. It improves brain and nerves, including memory. It promotes nerve growth. It upregulates genes and it downregulates genes. It removes free radicals. It has neuroprotective properties and it stimulates NGF. It improves heart health, including reducing fibrinogen and increasing myostatin, which I know we've talked a lot about cardiovascular health and even testosterone and brain health in your podcast before, and I want to touch on that in a bit.
Hmm.
But it also increases healing and tissue repair, resets 4,200 genes to their younger and healthier state, and the anti-cancer benefit, which is why they're in cancer clinics. It resets programmed cell death of cancer cells. So, cancer's in your body all the time, but when it starts to be a runaway train, that's when it becomes problematic, right?
Right.
And what this is doing is it's resetting the programmed cell death of those cancer cells without affecting the healthy cells and repairing damaged DNA and resetting 84 genes to protect against cancer. And then it also protects lung cells and improves skin and hair and lengthens telomeres. So that GHK-CU peptide is powerful. And that's why there are wellness clinics doing injections. But what we found is 4 injections in a day don't equate to the same level of your body elevating its GHK-CU peptide as one patch in one day. So this is the most remarkable thing I have ever seen or ever heard of. There's an amazing doctor, an anesthesiologist and 40-year physician who says this is the most significant medical breakthrough in my lifetime. And that for an anesthesiologist to say that, I think is pretty significant.
That's okay. Wow. Okay. We got the
Right?
pitch. We got the pitch. Okay. I'm all in. Curiosity peaked. Let's, for the listeners that need to break things down a little bit more, I'm a teacher by trade. So let's get into a few of the definitions. So let's just start right at the foundation of what we're talking about here. What is a stem cell for those that may not know exactly what they are?
Yeah. So that's your body's raw material. And that is the first two cells that came together were stem cells. They do a lot of things, not just build bone or muscle or cartilage or fat, but they also reduce inflammation. They trigger the death of old cells like apoptosis. So they kind of take out the trash. And then they self-replicate.
Okay. So then when we're talking about um, anti-aging, right? Now, if I go back into my training way back in the day when I was a young man, the DNA essentially starts getting clipped, and those telomeres, as we call them,
Swims.
start to shorten.
That's right.
And essentially, aging is the shortening of those telomeres because you're losing bits of DNA, and so then every time your cell replicates, it's a little bit crappier. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
of
your
it like
skin gets a little
a photocopy,
crappier.
right? Like a photocopier that
Ye-
worse and worse each
Right, that's the analogy.
it's
Right.
not quite copying all the parts and pieces quite right.
Right. So the quest to like have the fountain of youth is based in that biochemistry. So what is it then that the GHK-CU is doing? Is it working on that mechanism on the
Uh,
telomeres,
yeah,
and so it prevents them from being clipped?
not only prevents them from being clipped, it actually lengthens them back. So I think of
Whoa,
telling,
what? Wait, hold on a sec. Whoa,
yeah,
hold on a
no,
sec.
listen,
It lengthens
yes,
them, so
yes,
we can like Benjamin Button. Is that Benjamin
yes,
Button?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
We've seen people with their biological age reversing, 50-year-olds down to 25 years old in their blood biology, right, and all their organ health cells. And what is amazing, I mean, for those people who don't know about telomeres, think of the end of your tennis shoe lace, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little plastic cap. And imagine that little plastic cap getting shorter and shorter. It's protecting the shoelace from fraying, right? And so what's happening with that telomere is getting shorter and shorter. And what this is doing is it's actually lengthening them, lengthening them. And what's really cool is it's doing this with with an approach that you're very comfortable and familiar with. If I told you and we talked about when you go out in the sun, your body makes vitamin D. We
Yes.
know this.
Mm-hmm.
Or it tans. Your body makes melanin in response to the sunlight. So we know this. And what I would also not surprise you is if I said, hey, if I put night vision goggles on, David, I'm going to see that you glow. You have light inside of you, right? There's heat and there's light. And what this little patch does is it acts like a double-sided mirror reflecting your own light back into you at a very specific wavelength to stimulate a targeted beneficial biochemical response. It's not like you have to be out in the sun or you need any external light. So different than needing the red light therapy, we're just tapping into your own light, reflecting it back at a very specific wavelength. And there are different patches that do different things. There's a patch that you will love that reduces inflammation. And that patch that reduces inflammation, since inflammation eats up our stem cells, we love to increase and activate those master foundational cells. But if we don't reduce the inflammation, if someone's highly inflamed, they're not going to be able to go to work for you because they're going to get eaten up. They're going to rush to the site of inflammation and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to get eaten up. So when we can lower inflammation with this other patch and elevate and activate those master foundational cells, now we can really get some significant progress really pretty quickly.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna come back to that one, but when we're talking about the GHK-CU peptide, um, what's a peptide for those that may need some
Yeah.
clarification on that?
Yeah, I will tell you. There's this whole book called How to Reverse Aging: A Comprehensive Guide to Copper Peptides, and it opens with the definition. What are peptides? Peptides are a type of biological molecule made up of a chain of amino acid. They are smaller than proteins and they're produced in the body by a process known as transcription and translation. So we're familiar with insulin. Insulin
Mm,
is a peptide. Now we're familiar
right.
with Ozempic and other things too, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of different kinds of peptides that do a lot of different things.
And so yeah, when we boil it down, right? We're familiar with peptides. We may just not know that they are called peptides, and insulin being
That's right.
the main one that is ubiquitous now because so many people have to take insulin
Right.
for their diabetes. So if I understand correctly, like wavelength, so like Einstein said, everything is energy.
Yeah.
So if you understand that wavelengths and vibration are essentially the building blocks of the universe, this is a topic that I've just started to really dive into in the last few months. Your vibrational energy, people always say, "Oh, you're giving off a good vibe." Well, there's a reason why we have that expression, right?
That's
It's because
right.
you're vibrating at a certain frequency. Yesterday, or was it yesterday, 2 days ago, I had this really interesting chat with another lady that was like cleansing my chakras.
Oh,
I'm like, hey, cool. Like I'm totally down with every modality there is, right? And she's like, hey, when you go home, you might be a little bit off, but not in a bad way. People might notice that you're a little bit. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, sure. But I go home. I'm not kidding you. I was like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, actually, there's nothing wrong. I'm actually kind of chilled out. She's like, it's making me feel weird. So
wow.
like I was vibrating at a different frequency for sure because I felt different. She noticed it. The kids noticed it, but not in a negative way. But it was kind of off-putting. So this is what I think is really cool. There's a wavelength here that we're tapping into without any external light source, without any external energy source. We are using the patch. So if I understand correctly, that small patch that you have on your wrist, and is it site dependent? Like, do you have to have it specifically somewhere, or is it just wherever you feel
Actually,
is more comfortable?
we in the lab studies, there's over 130 clinical studies. Many are double-blind, placebo-controlled, peer-reviewed. But in the studies, they did it on that little knobby guy on the back of your neck,
Yeah.
or they did it below the belly button. And but we have actually found, I mean, you could put it on the end of your nose or the tip of your toes, or it doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
to elevate your GHK-CU. What we do find is that if someone has a hurt shoulder and we put it there, we can actually reduce pain typically because we can reduce inflammation to that site more quickly. Ultimately, the pain can go away over time, but for speed of reduction of pain, we find placing it on top of the site actually improves pain
Okay.
reduction.
Okay. So that is absolutely fascinating. Like I was just looking at some research right before having you on the show, and like if you go on PubMed, there's like you said, there's ample research on this, like ample research, and not something that was just from the last few years. Like you said, it goes back decades,
50
which is
years.
fascinating.
Mhm.
And so like I'm always curious, is it because this is such a low cost solution to potentially some of
Mhm.
the biggest, well, if not the biggest medical issue that plagues North Americans, which is inflammation. It's everywhere. It is what 60 something plus percent of all chronic diseases are due to inflammation. Is this the way that pharma loses its grip? And is that why folks aren't, like you mentioned, a good case for athletes? They want a competitive edge. They don't want every athlete putting these on and getting a little bit of an edge because they're dealing in fractions of a second. So everything works for them that can give them a little bit of an edge. But for the average, like Joe and Jane Doe, right? This could be absolutely groundbreaking. And at a worst case, like you're talking about, Dr. Rothschild, the worst case scenario is that it does nothing,
Well,
right? So is that what we're dealing with here?
I've never seen it do nothing. It's just a matter of, will you wait until you notice the difference? Like,
Mm,
this is not an overnight thing. So the pain relief can be, but the GHK-CU elevation and the reversal of disease and the improvement of your mitochondrial health and the improvement and the reduction of that inflammation and all of the things that go into that. Imagine your master foundational cells going into that shoulder, debriding the scar tissue you have in there and building new tissue. That doesn't happen overnight, but we've seen bulging discs forward with spinal stenosis and an MRI that looks bad. And then,
that's me.
you know,
That's me.
15,
Yeah.
16 months later looks perfect.
No,
No, I will look,
Darlene, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
look, I am reverseaging.com. Look right there. You'll see the photo of it. I am reverseaging.com and you'll see the pictures. You'll also see pictures of people with PET scans lung cancer throughout their whole body, and 5 months later, their PET scan is clean. Now, I'm just like Dr. Rush, I'm not allowed to say it treats, cures, or prevents disease.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does, because it's really the body optimizing, it's the body tapping into its own innate wisdom and knowing how to heal itself. We're just elevating the copper peptide. That's what we can make a claim to do. And then the rest of it is your body's going at it. But what I will tell you is there are two studies I want to draw your attention to. One, because one was amazing for me because I got to experience the lift of the depression in just 3 weeks. And I got to see the difference in my husband, and it's specifically on brain. And you can actually see the pictures of some of the brains on my website there too, of before, 3 weeks later, and 6 weeks later. So in the before pictures of these EEG brain scan, this was a double-blind placebo-controlled study done in 2019 by SciTech. You see redness. And what that redness is, David, is that's inflammation. And that is a hypercoherence, poor communication between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It's also PTSD, it's autism, it is a poor performing brain, it's ADHD, right? It's not healthy. When you look at it 3 weeks later, that whole EEG has changed. When you look at it 6 weeks later, you've got a different map altogether. And what they found in the study is it supported cell and nerve regeneration. It improved the nervous system and lowered anxiety. How many of our veterans need that? How many of any parent needs, we all need that, right? It decreased brain inflammation, and it improved memory, focus, and cognition. In fact, they found the more challenging the task, the more improvement they saw. And so that is what I got to see happen immediately with my husband. I got to experience my own relief right away. But we have seen so many people, to your point about big pharma, here's the problem. They don't need their medicine anymore. They're not taking their anti-anxiety medicine. 15 days in, my friend's daughter no longer ever used her ADHD medicine again. My doctor friend no longer takes her thyroid medicine. I know tons of people who no longer take their insulin. They no longer need cholesterol, which you and I agree 100% that cholesterol, I haven't finished the cholesterol podcast, but I am a big proponent of higher cholesterol and making sure that we're actually, doing what we can, because I think some of the anti-cholesterol medicines and blood pressure medicines are what potentially could be causing the Alzheimer's epidemics. I've had doctors tell me that is what's causing Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So, this breaks their entire business model. And just to continue and perpetuate the issue, looking at a study that was done on the heart, well, it was actually vascular system, which is, not just the heart, it's top of the head, right. Feet. In 6 weeks, participants saw improvement in their vascular system. And to the point that every 6 weeks, the cardiovascular system began functioning as if it were 8 weeks younger. And what that means is huge. That's huge for, you were talking about in your podcast, I forgot the name of the doctor, but he was talking about how it's not the cholesterol so much.
Dr. Ovadia.
Yeah, it's the problem is really the blood vessel integrity, right? The blood vessel's compromised, so there's this increase of cholesterol to go repair. Right. Well, what happens with GHK-CU is it actually helps new blood vessels form, and it promotes proper circulation, and it prevents the blood from clotting too much, and it restores integrity to vessel walls. What is really cool about this is that I think is why I no longer faint. I think I'm getting enough blood to the brain because I think my whole cardiovascular system has revamped my blood vessels to get the proper, amount. And this is where we've seen optimization. The body knows where it needs to be. So we've had people with high blood pressure have their blood pressure, all of a sudden it's normalized. We've had people with low blood pressure like me have their blood pressure normalized. It's going to homeostasis. And this has a tremendous benefit for people who have there's hormone balancing. The hormone, you and I agree on the importance of the balancing of the hormones and the fact that, if people are having, not enough proper hormones, then you're seeing, impacts on their sexual situation, and that's potentially leading to a potential indicator that there's cardiovascular issues. Mm-hmm. What we see is when we start to improve these cardiovascular issues, we have people with all sorts of, erectile dysfunction. That goes away. We've got people, I've actually had 3 different friends, not knowing each other, said, there should be a warning that this pouch comes with that says that your spouse is going to chase you around the house, because just increasing those types of activities as well.
Fellas, bring it in. Nice and tight. Bring it in. Nice and tight. We need to talk about it. All right. Seriously. We need to talk about something that most of us don't want to talk about. That's why I put on my nice blue dress shirt to bring a bit of seriousness to an often hilarious topic. But your sexual health is no joke. Seriously, though, sexual health needs a lot more attention than it's been given. Let me go over a few things here. Research has shown that regular sex, what's 1 to 2 times per week, can reduce the risk of cardiovascular mortality by 50%. Bring that one to your wife right now. Lower the risk of prostate cancer by 33% and reinvigorate your mind and body. The problem is 40% of men in their 40s, 50% of men in their 50s, and 60% of men in their 60s experience some form of erectile dysfunction. This is even worse in the veteran community. On top of all this, erectile dysfunction is correlated with a future cardiovascular event and is an early warning sign of a future issue. This is why Dr. Elliott, board certified urologist and friend of the podcast, has created this one of a kind, first in its category, revolutionary device called the Firm Tech Ring. This high-speed tech for your dick will give you real-time data and allow you to see how many nocturnal erections you get every night, which can be a great bit of data that you can bring to your doctor for a future conversation. Not only that, this data could literally save your life. You know, I'm all about improving the health and lives of the veteran community. And that's why I've paired up with Dr. Elliott Justin to provide you with a 10% discount if you head to the link that's here in the description to get yourself your first Firm Tech Ring if you use the code DMorrow at checkout. So head to the link in the description and start tracking so that you can start banging. All right, brother. So go do what you got to do and be one of the first to bring a whole new meaning to being hard to kill. Hey there, Hard to Kill listeners. Today's episode is brought to you by Natesto. Did you know that only 5% of men get treated for low testosterone? Low testosterone is a serious health concern that is rarely discussed, especially in the veteran community. Toxic exposure, mild traumatic brain injuries, and terrible sleep habits can all contribute to a rock bottom total T-score. I want to help improve the health and fitness of the veteran community, and that's why I've partnered with Natesto. Talk to your doctor today and see if Natesto is the right solution for you. Well, it makes sense. Yeah, it all makes sense. This is, root cause.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it medicine, but root cause thinking, where instead of attacking the symptoms, which is the current paradigm, you have a symptom. Okay, let's attack it. Well, unless the symptom, and this is a chat I had with Dr. Kelly Starrett about, our medical system does a great job at critical care. Like if you're squirting fluids out of you somewhere, like there's blood squirt. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's a symptom you got to take care of right now.
Yeah.
And the problem is we've used that system to take care of all ailments. So we don't go to root cause. And in this case, I'm glad you brought up mitochondria, because for me, that's been kind of the root issue that needs to be solved. And we don't talk about mitochondria because it sounds too scientific and people kind of glaze their eyes over and like, oh, mitochondria, I learned about that in grade 9 science. I never heard of that since, but your mitochondrial function and the health of your mitochondria, which is, the energy power plant of your cell, if you want to bastardize it, right?
Yeah.
It is so important for it to be working properly and producing ATP, because that is the fundamental unit that keeps everything working. And you can't make new cells without that. You cannot have your metabolism work without it. And so therefore, every cell in your body that produces ATP needs to be working properly. And so, and further to that, did I hear correctly that nervous tissue starts to regenerate?
Yes.
Because nervous tissue, in textbooks, it you can't regenerate nervous tissue. Hence the reason why paralysis, if you have let's say you have a severing of, any one of the nerves in the spinal column, below the, thoracic spine or whatever it may be, you're paraplegic because you can't grow those cells back.
Right.
But what you're saying is that there is an ability for the cells to slowly start coming back. Now, I'm assuming not to the extent of paralysis yet, but what you're saying in the brain, there's definitely some improvements with function and like neuron to neuron communication. Did I get that right?
We have nerve regeneration. There are testimonials of people who couldn't walk who walk. There are testimonials of
No.
who could not see, could not feel half of their body, feel half their body. There's one, I was listening to one last night of someone who had no feeling in their half of their body, of their face, and in as quickly as 6 weeks. It was actually, is it Bell's palsy? I think it's Bell's palsy that they had.
Hmm.
And so they had basically numbness and no feeling and a droopy eye and a droopy lip. And in 6 weeks, that was completely gone. They had been to doctors for years with there basically being no cure. I'm glad you brought up the mitochondrial function, David, because you're going to love this because this is right down your alley. I know you love Navy SEALs, and congratulations on your accomplishments with the Navy SEALs and your heroic efforts there. Because oh my gosh, I would just no, not
It
happening.
was
But
awful. It was awful. I'm never doing it again.
my ex-husband is a Navy SEAL, so I know more about them than I care to know. But
Gotcha.
but I will tell you that the very first patches ever invented, our inventor and owner was asked by the Department of Defense to create for our U.S. Navy SEALs because they needed to be staying awake 3 and 4 days at a time and
Hmm.
have that energy in cold water, in suds, whatever. And so he produced this first 2-patch system, which is what was being used in the 2008 Olympics, because that was the first patch. And what it does is it increases beta oxidation. So that's the energy
Mm.
production in the cell. So
Yep.
that's producing more energy from fat burning. It's improving the mitochondrial function, and it is improving endurance and reducing fatigue and reducing muscle soreness. And it actually even offers anti-congestion and improved breathing. It is amazing in that it burns 300 to 600 more calories a day, and it helps energy flow through the body. And other patches actually work better, but it gives you this Energizer Bunny energy, different than a shot of caffeine or anybody who's drinking, caffeine drinks or those energy drinks that are really have problems for you. This is a much, much healthier approach because it's actually good for your body and it's giving you that all day energy. And I love that. This is a patch. These patches were worn by the Stanford swim team and then the Olympic team. And they found that I think it was 6 out of 7 broke their personal records in the first 2 weeks of wearing the patches, one of which was a world record. And they did that in the swimming practice pool, not even in a meet. So, I mean, this is why our athletes, when you can recover. And the other thing I wanted to, you are up on glutathione. So most people I know don't know what glutathione is, but I've heard you reference glutathione and the
Put it on
importance.
my face.
Yes. For those that don't know though, glutathione is your body's master antioxidant, right? It is your immune booster. So it's something that someone like me with 4 autoimmune disorders needed to know. I was getting IVs of glutathione. I was getting, taking it orally, which is still meh, it's not that effective because at its best, the IV, you're getting maybe a 27% boost for a half-life of 7 minutes.
Right.
We actually are that activation patch that activates that GHK-CU, that master foundational cell. That patch elevates your glutathione by 30%. And right out of
Mm.
the gate. We have a different patch that's actually elevates your glutathione by 300%. And so what we find is that patch combined with that anti-inflammation patch and that master foundational cell activation patch, those 3 patches are phenomenal. First of all, after 2 months, they get rid of the spike protein. The spike
Whoa.
protein
Well, I
in
wasn't expecting. Oh, okay. You know what? That was in the back of my mind. I'm like, I don't know if we're going to talk about that today. Okay, let's get into that. Okay, so
spike.
I have a protocol I got from Dr. McCullough. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're aware of it.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for a few years, I guess a year and a half now. some days I miss, but whatever. I have all the ingredients there. I've been meaning to do content on it, but I've just been using it just in case, because for me, I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And now you're saying that this patch is, it's destroying the spike protein. So you don't have
We actually
really,
we actually did my friend that lives here did a 6-cell study of her blood. She saw that there were just tons of spike proteins, and you would, actually she wasn't expecting that because she had never gotten the vaccination and she didn't think she'd ever had COVID. But that's how many of us have spike protein just from the people around us and the shedding we've had. So she has this spike protein across all of these 6 cells. And of course, they want her to do the McCullough protocol. And she's like, you know what? I understand that these 3 patches combined for a couple of months will do it. I'm going to give this a try. She went back and had her blood tested in 6 weeks. They were all gone except one. And of course, I think it was like on its way out the door. Every single one of them except one was gone. So it absolutely is unbelievable. The other study that was done on those 3 patches is there were all of these people who were supposed to have knee surgery, and they all had very bad knees. And, most doctors will tell you can't regrow cartilage. But after 2 to 3 months of wearing those 3 patches, none of the people in the study went on to have a knee surgery, and they actually could see the regeneration of cartilage. And there are some sports medicine doctors who are actually injecting glutathione for the purposes of growing cartilage. But better than injecting glutathione or even IVing glutathione is getting your body to produce it itself. And again, this is what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about putting it into your body through your bloodstream or injecting it. It is your body creating it and producing it. It's so much healthier because it's not going to overdo it. It's not going to overdo the testosterone. It's not going to stop. Like if you're doing hormone therapy, and we talked about in one of your podcasts that, you start taking hormone therapy, replacement therapy, potentially you stop building sperm and your testosterone. So, well, what happens if it's just your own body elevating your hormones to the right level? I don't think that same issue is going to fly because we've actually seen increases in fertility, both for men and women in patching.
Well, that touches on the concept of homeostasis, which you mentioned earlier, right? Reaching homeostasis is the body's daily task. So if it's out of homeostasis, we're constantly trying to heal. So that healing process can look like it's damaging us, right? Like chronic inflammation is your body trying to heal the thing that's causing the inflammation. So if your testosterone is crushed, and this is something that I'm passionate about now because I have it myself. A lot of my friends, because of military service, and on top of that, just societally, we're seeing it just across the board with men that aren't in the military have lower testosterone. And that's kind of like a flashing red light that something is clearly wrong in our environment, in my opinion. And so there needs to be some sort of solution right now to get to and then the root cause of like, well, then what caused that in the first place is probably going to take decades to unravel. But in my mind, I'm starting to come up with a protocol here. So tell me if this makes sense. So patch, get in the cold water, do some Wim Hof breathing, and do some ketogenic dieting, because all of these touch on the improvement of mitochondrial health. That's like the point of doing like cold and breath work and keto, like we're talking about beta oxidation. That seems like if you do all those, you'll be like Superman in like 3 weeks.
Sounds like a beautiful thing. And actually, it's interesting. We actually have people do a health tracker to document where are you when you start, how are you feeling, show me how you are 24 hours, and then in a week, and at 14 days, and at 80% of people feel a positive impact in 3 to 6 weeks. We recommend you patch for a month for every decade you are old to activate all those stem cells. But unlike a medicine, when you I know you were talking about, well, if you stop testosterone, then it's like it all starts dropping back, and you would get, it's like a blood pressure medicine. You stop the blood pressure medicine, your blood pressure goes back up again if you have high blood pressure. This is not like that. This is actually going into the root cell and actually repairing and regenerating. And so what happens when you stop is you are a new person. Like you have healed inside of that, and you are not starting back at ground zero. You're not just gonna like the lid fall off. So most people, you don't have to patch forever. You can't. I mean, I will be, because I want to keep reverse aging. There are cumulative benefits. I love the story. There was this wonderful guy. His name was Bob Campbell, and I've And Bob is the sweetest little old man. You just, he actually gets teary telling you the story. That's how emotional he is because of how this has changed his life. And he will credit it with saving his son's life, actually, who was suicidal and a veteran. But Bob will tell you in the first week, his energy doubled. And then in 6 to 7 weeks, his sleep improved dramatically, which was huge because he had serious sleep issues since he was a sophomore. At 3.5 months, his breathing improved. And at 3.5 months, his prostate improved. So he had prostate cancer. He had a prostate surgery, and he needed a pill to be able to urinate. And he had needed that pill to urinate for 12 years. And when he hadn't taken the pill twice on 2 separate occasions, he had ended up in the emergency room. That's how serious it was. Well, at 3.5 months, he noticed my flow is really strong. I don't think I need this pill. And he never had to take the pill again after 3.5 months. Then at 6 months, his energy's through the roof. The problem was what Bob wanted was he wanted his feet and his knees to feel better because he'd had 7 surgeries on his foot and he'd had like 5 knee surgeries. So really all he cared about were his knees and his feet, and they weren't fixing. At 6 months, he had better energy. He even had improved sight and improved hearing. But he did not have improvement in his knees and his feet. So he thought about quitting right there. He's like, okay, but he's like 70 something years old. And they had said, a month for every decade, a month for every decade. So he kept going. And it took at 7.5 months, he finally noticed he had no more foot pain. He had no more knee pain. And his arthritis in his hands had just gone away. And so he could finally wear his wedding ring again. No swelling. And then he just decided to keep pouching. And so at the 18th to 20th month, the precancerous scabs that had burned off, he had to have them burned off twice, 120 of them on his hands. He was a mailman. And he had told me that he just cried through the burning procedure. It was excruciating. And so he'd been putting it off. He just didn't want to do it again. They'd grown back again and he didn't want to do it. But he noticed at 18 to 20 months that they were gone. Every one was gone except one on his hand. And he showed it to me. This is the only one that's still here. And then he kept patching. And then at the 3-year mark, he noticed that he didn't need glasses for the first time to read since 3rd grade. So, there's this cumulative effect. And I want that. I want that reverse aging. I don't want to leave it to, there's so much in the world we're fighting. The toxins in the air, the toxins in the water, the toxins in our food, the lack of nutrition in our food. It's really hard to be healthy today, especially if you can't get that inflammation down, or you can't get your glutathione up, or we're not building enough muscle, right? The muscle deprivation over time. I mean, you're doing a great job of helping people get stronger and get more fit. And that is really important. As you go past 60, number one cause of all-cause morbidity is falls. And why? Because of loss of muscle. And why don't they have muscle? Because it's declining. And do you know what's really fascinating is that the patches help build muscle. So they actually increase not only just lean muscle mass and reduce fat, but they increase bone density. So we have people that have had osteoporosis or osteopenia that have just completely changed their bone density, and the scan, it tells the story. And I love that because we need to, when I was patching my mom and dad, my first thought is I need them to improve their stability. I need mom to be able to open up a pickle jar and have more muscle strength, right? I need her to not fall down. And so I love that this has done that. It has increased their stability. And there's even a study on how much improvement in muscle strength and even push-ups and sit-ups and squats and those kinds of things with one of our patch. It was remarkable. And I mean, in 2 months, improved sit-ups by 70%, improved push-ups by 81%, improved squats by 47%, improved bicep curl by 112%, and improved grip strength by 74%.
Wow.
That's that pickle jar, right? That's my mom being able to open a jar and stay sturdy.
That's also, most falls, there's a correlation between grip strength and leg strength as well, because your grip strength, right, is your ability to grab onto something and hold on if you're falling. So if you're falling, you grab onto a railing, great. But if your grip strength is too weak, it's just going to let go. And same with your quad strength, right?
That's right.
That's stepping and then like stumbling and then catching yourself with your leg. Well, the load on that leg, on that quad is going to be immense. But if you cannot brace it because you cannot produce enough resistance, you're going to buckle, and then that's how you fall. And like that's my concern too with my parents. But thankfully, I was just talking about this actually on the group call with Dr. Larson, actually, who's just presenting. She's a USMC veteran and she's a doctor of physical therapy. She's like, you got to get strong, you got to keep muscle, you got to at all costs get strong. It doesn't matter if you're 70. And I brought up the story that my mother, she started at 70. She'd never been to a gym in her life, but she got freaked out when my son was born. And so she's at the CrossFit gym, like with my coach,
I
doing
love
squats and deadlifts, right? Like
I
she,
love that.
because the doctors, and she got really scared, and rightly so. They diagnosed her with sarcopenia, which is
Mhm.
very common. It's just muscle wasting, essentially, because you're not using your muscles. They're like, yeah, you're going to be in a wheelchair in like 3 years if you don't. And they're likely correct, but they didn't give any solution. I'm like, Ma, this is time for you to hit the gym. And she's like, oh, I don't know. Well, what do you have to lose? Seriously. So now 8 years later, yeah, she's still walking. She was just over yesterday taking care of the kids. Like that is just proof that, you can do a lot even without a patch. But so that's my next question. You're going to patch, right? There's some people that may think, oh, this is a magic bullet, I can just sit on my butt. Is there a requirement to be more active? Or maybe I should rephrase it, like, does the patch then, because you're starting to see an uptick in energy, are you seeing people automatically just fall into the natural state of being active? Because that's what I think our natural state is being active and doing active things. But our environment and our food and everything forces us into an unnatural state, which is sedentary. But as soon as you're given the conditions where your body feels alive again, you'll naturally start moving again. Is there something to that? Am I
Yes.
making sense?
Oh boy, David, you're so on point. That is so perceptive of you, because I would not have thought about it myself, except I experienced it. And now I've heard lots of testimonials to that effect. I knew I needed to go to the gym. I knew I needed to do weightlifting. I just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to. But all of a sudden I'm waking up before my alarm, and all of a sudden I have energy in the morning. I'm like, I'm going to go work out. I want to go work out. And all of a sudden I enjoy working out, and I'm not like hobbling around for 3 days after, because my recovery is so much
It's so
better.
good. Yeah.
I'm not so sore. So now the whole process is more enjoyable, and I look forward to it more. People begin to, the only requirement is that you drink water. You have to drink half of your body weight in ounces in water. And it is incredibly helpful if you are getting the proper nutrition. Like, if you are trying to make copper peptide, you need to have some copper in your body to make copper peptide. A lot of people actually don't have enough copper. So eat a piece of chocolate, a dark chocolate, or do a 3 milligram copper supplement. That actually reduces pain for a lot of people in and of itself. But, we do need the ingredients to bake the cake. And so we'll find, for example, that vegans may need to add a particular nutrient so that they can benefit from like a patch that elevates carnosine that we have. Carnosine is phenomenal for a lot of elite athletes understand carnosine's effect on increasing muscle strength. Is muscle strength in our patch by 125%. Also defends against cancer, and it is amazing for the eyes. It's amazing for the brain, the heart, and the muscles. But we have had people with amazing eye results. They actually do carnosine shots in the eyes. People pay thousands of dollars for these shots in the eyes. And we've had people that no longer have to do those shots and have very good vision. I have a friend here locally who wasn't even on that patch. She was on that activation of the master foundational cell patch and the anti-inflammation patch. I think just those two. And in 3 weeks, her stigmatism went away.
Wow.
3 weeks. And she had literally gone to the doctor, had it tested. They had the stigmatism, and she was then going in for a glass prescription. And she's like, my eyes, I just don't feel like I'm seeing better. Like, I know I don't believe that's possible, but I think that's right. So she goes in and retests before getting the glass prescription in, and they give her a prescription, and there's no numbers for the stigmatism. And she's like, what about the numbers for my stigmatism? And she's had this for years, right? They said, there was no stigmatism. And that was her normal, optometrist. And they said, I don't know where, we don't see those go away. So not sure how that happened, but those kinds of I have testimonials on dang near everything you could imagine that would just blow your socks off. From the Agent Orange veteran that had end-stage leukemia, they said, we're going to give you this pill, this pharmaceutical drug. It's going to kill you, but it's going to give you improved quality of life until you die. and he begins patching, and he's now out of bed, out of pain, no longer needing the walker or the wheelchair in as quickly as 3 days. And in 2 weeks, he's now flying and traveling across the country to get to the Hawaii USS Arizona, which was on his bucket list. He goes with my friend's dad, and they do 2 6-hour tours with no walker and no wheelchair. He donates the walker and the wheelchair. He had previously sold all of his cows for his farm because he was dying. He'd gotten all of his affairs in order. He's since bought all the cows back. He's got very high quality life and doing great. My friend who has a child that's sort of like autistic, she has helped about 5 families patch with children that are autistic. Actually, I say children, but some of them are young adults actually. But her daughter, who was 16, was essentially kindergarten academically, cognitive. And she's the one who in 15 days was all of a sudden a different child, no longer needed the ADHD medicine, was able to focus. Best score she'd ever gotten in math was a 52. She got 100. In 5 weeks, they retested all of her panels, and where she had been kindergarten before, she was upper third, lower fourth grade in just 5 weeks of one patch. Just one patch. And that progress continued so that now, I think 10 months in, they tested her and her executive functioning had improved to that of a 16-year-old. It had not registered at all in the previous year. So these are miracles that happen all the time. And when I talked about the Returning Warrior Weekend program that I put together long ago, 2006, and how intrinsically rewarding that was, and that I had really not found anything like that until this. Imagine I get a text every day from someone, oh my gosh, Darlene, I cannot even wait till I tell you this. And one day I got a 4-minute voice message. Oh, all of these things that had happened in a week, right? It's just crazy. And it's so rewarding to help people get out of pain. A little 74-year-old woman who was on the scale of 1 to 10. What's your pain level? 15. Had been like that for years.
15. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I'm like, how are you living with that? And she said, I'm barely surviving it. And so we patched her in 1 minute. We took her down to 0 on her pain scale. And a week later talked to her, and she said to me, Darlene, it's not an understatement to say that you have saved my life.
That's incredible.
That is so rewarding and meaningful to me.
No doubt. So Darlene, the most important question now, how do we get these patches?
Yeah, my website, I would love for people to reach out. I will do a free consultation. I love helping people with this. You can buy them directly from the website, but I would recommend you work with me so that I can make sure you get wholesale prices. I don't want you to pay $150, and you don't have to be, if you're on the retail side of the house, you have to be on auto ship. You don't. You can buy once at the wholesale prices. You just need to make sure that I'm helping set you up with that. You can see all of the clinical studies on my website. You can actually dive in and look more and learn more about GHK-CU. You can see a video on how it all works. You can see a deep dive for practitioners. There's a lot of practitioners, very famous practitioners using the patches, in fact. And there's more information than you can actually shake a stick at that. But you can contact me, and that reaches out. Let me know where you're calling from, or you're, so we get the time zones right, because there's people. We're in 82 countries, David. This is not just the US. We're in Canada. We're in, probably where every one of your listeners actually is. There's just a ton there. There's even how we use them there's veterinarians using them with horses and dogs. There was a dog that we had who could not walk, paralyzed. Do you see that? Do you see it right there? Do you see the cancer on the right there?
Bottom right here?
Yes.
Yeah, those are all tumors.
And then on the left, she could not, that's Nikki. She could not swallow, David. She had to get fed through an IV because the cancer had strangled her throat. And then 5 months later, you see her PET scan on the left. And you can see over to the left, the regenerative disc, just right there, the spine MRIs. That is 4 bulging discs and spinal stenosis. And, it took a while, it didn't happen overnight, but that's a totally different back spine there. And that is not something medical, there's no surgery for that. There's no medicine for that. Obviously we love the young reverse aging that we see with, fewer wrinkles and younger looking skin. I actually had very severe rosacea and dry eczema. I don't have that anymore. No dermatologist was ever able to get rid of that for me, but it has. But what I would say is that's just an outward appearance of the improved health of your organs inside. Your skin is your largest organ, right? And when we are able to elevate epithelium and elevate collagen production, collagen is like the infrastructure or the structural cell, right? It's the thing holding that cell up. And we see our cells age, they shrink, they get less, they're holding less water, they look older, right? You can actually see cell health. And what we find is we're increasing collagen production, and that improves every cell's health.
This is so fascinating, Darlene. Like clearly you're super passionate about this and I understand why, right? You're helping people at a fundamental level, at a root cause level. And that's what came across when you reached out to me, that this is something that you're clearly passionate about. And obviously you had a strong why.
I
And
do.
your husband being that strong why. And it's impressive to hear the testimonials that you're talking about here. And I'm very curious. So I think I'm going to do some content on this, Darlene. I think with my little my injuries and the things that I've had to deal with over the years too, I'll definitely do a case study for you on
Yeah,
this
I
for
would love
sure.
that. Yeah. And David,
And
one of the biggest things is that there's, nobody knows about it. Like it's just, although
no,
I have four doctors, when I asked them about this and said, have you heard of this? They said, oh yeah, I use those patches. What? Why didn't you tell me? I was so mad, David. If I would have known about this 5 years ago, I don't think my husband would be where he is today.
yeah,
And so I'm livid that more people don't know about it. And I'm not the person that would go on a podcast. If you would have asked me 2 years ago if I would be on a podcast, I would have told you you're crazy. If you would have told me I didn't even post on Facebook. I didn't post I had no footprint.
hmm
And now I'm feeling like, it is criminal for people to not know about this because there's somebody today who's where I was 5 years ago, who needs this, who needs it right now.
absolutely. I feel the same way too. I mean, I wasn't active on social media at all 5 years ago. I didn't even have my picture on social media. And if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'm going to be hosting a podcast, I'm going to be talking about fitness and health, I said, you're smoking something, dude, because that's not me. But the why became so compelling,
That's right.
and understanding that I was able to see an improvement by getting myself healthier and fitter so that I could convey that message to others, and now do it at scale and talk to amazing folks like yourself to convey all the amazing benefits that this simple technology can have is pretty outstanding. So yeah, thanks for being such a passionate advocate for this product, this tech, and bringing awareness to it, because I didn't know anything about it. I'll be honest, like, yeah, peptides, sure. I know
Yeah.
about them. I'm learning about them, but in terms of their healing capacity, I was kind of in the dark. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this. And there's so many other rabbit holes to go down, I'm sure. But my next step is definitely to get some patches,
Yes.
and I definitely want to get some for my family members as well, and give this a try, because I mean, all other treatments for a lot of us, right? They come up against a wall a lot of times, because you can only treat so much with big pharma. And now my other concern is that big pharma is going to put a big X
It is.
on this podcast, and they're just like, they're going to hit the switch, just pull the switch and just lock it down. Just get, like Dave Morrow, no, that's it. That's one too many. You're done. You're
I love
done.
that, David. It is starting to enter a little bit more into mainstream. So there's this cardiologist local in Arizona
Mhm.
who Dr. Neller, he has presented to the American Health Association in August, and he's presenting again in 3 days. And he has actually got case studies that have been before GICE. I think that's the Journal of Integrative. I don't know. I don't know, but it's a case study that he submitted. He is showing, and he's got really gory pictures of, for example, one is a pacemaker infection, and it's like a hole. And
Oof.
he puts that master foundational cell activation patch on, and it healed 50% faster. And then another case study where he has it's basically like a hematoma from a pacemaker pocket hematoma. And so this is a very bad looking bruisey area that would normally have taken months to heal.
hmm
And he used three different patches, the one that activates the master foundational cells, the one that elevates carnosine, and the one that elevates glutathione, and found that it healed it 500% faster.
Oh, jeez.
500% faster. He
Ugh.
also has done, he shows by patching with, he's presenting how patching with a bunch of patches can improve mitral valve prolapse and the fluid and the actual ejection fraction rate. And so we have like, it's crossing into mainstream and starting to get there, but my worry is that those kind of doctors are going to get shut down really quickly. At least the American Health Association not only had him in, he was very well received in August, and apparently is encouraged in November. So that's encouraging to me because I want to see more and more regular doctors, not just that. What the problem is, and people don't understand this, they get paid by big pharma every time they write a script. They actually can make more money in the actual kickbacks that they make from the prescriptions that they write than they do their base salary. And so they're not incentivized for something like this that costs next to nothing, relatively speaking.
No, exactly. I totally agree with you on that. And ultimately, the way I see health and healthcare in the future, it's going to be very individualized, and individuals are going to be way more empowered to find the solutions that work for them, and that requires personal responsibility. And that's one of my main through lines, is you got to take the responsibility for your own health, because nobody's coming to save you. You have to do the research, and not everything on this show is going to be for you, but there for sure is going to be one thing that you're like, maybe I should give that a try, and it'll have game-changing results. So Darlene, before we wrap up, some final thoughts.
Well, I'm 100%. If you were to ask me before you just did your last statement, I would have said you need to take charge of your own health, and that's exactly my mantra as well. And I've had that mantra for a good 40 years, because the Western medicine approach could do nothing for my chronic fatigue syndrome. They could do nothing for my fibromyalgia, and it was basically this is a lifetime disorder that you'll have forever. Well, no, I haven't, and I would only say that there is nothing to lose, not even your money. There's a money back guarantee as well. Like, there's nothing to lose in trying. And as skeptical as you all might be, which I get, I totally was myself. I really knew nothing about light therapy. I didn't believe a little sticker could possibly make a difference. But your body is so wise, and trust it, because it doesn't matter. You may not even know. And actually, I don't even think that doctors know what a diagnosis of fibromyalgia even means, or chronic. I don't think I think it's a bucket and a set of symptoms, but they really just don't even know the cause of it. And so, to your point, getting upstream, going to the root cause, having your body repair and regenerate in the area of need, whether you know what's causing your issue or not, that is powerful. And I would say just give it time. We say you'll probably see 10% improvement a month on your issue, especially major issues. So give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. Anything anybody promises you overnight, even the doctor on the red light therapy said, you need like 6 times, right? It's not going to be an overnight success thing, but anybody that promises you anything overnight's probably not real. But this is real, and it's really changing the face of medicine.
So, folks, if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening to the audio, Darlene's site is imreverseaging.com. So head over to imreverseaging.com, find your patches, and let's start healing together. Darlene, thanks so much for an amazing conversation. This was such a good podcast, and I think the folks are going to get a lot of improvement in their health from your insights. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for all your help to veterans everywhere. And thank you for just the wisdom that you're sharing. I just love it all. So I appreciate you very much.
Thanks. Really appreciate that. So folks, don't forget, see you on the next one. Train hard, fight easy. Peace.